Hello and welcome to this short input on understanding anxiety and low mood in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is part of the rollout of the nationally developed Wellbeing Education Return package, a series of training and resources intended to support education staff to promote the well-being and resilience of children and young people and the wider school community to aid recovery in light of the impact of the pandemic. My name's Lindsay and I'm an educational psychologist working within Salford. Co-delivering with me today I have Amy, who's a trainee educational psychologist also working in Salford. You may have attended the Wellbeing for Education Return training that was delivered in the autumn term of 2020. These slides form part of that training. This video stands alongside 5 other videos covering key sections from the training, which are wellbeing frameworks, resilience, staff wellbeing, bereavement and loss, and stress and trauma. Please do check these out. There are also drop-ins planned for the spring term of 2021 covering topics relevant to your local area.
As Lindsay mentioned, we're going to be thinking about understanding anxiety and low mood. We know that stress is a normal part of life and we all experience stress. And examples of positive or tolerable stress may be that stress that helps us to revise for our exams or prepare well for a job interview. We all experience anxieties, which are fears and worries. A low level of anxiety and stress is normal, particularly at the moment, and can be recovered from easily with social support. A more traumatic response would be more severe, go on longer, and require more specialist support perhaps. However, if we become too stressed, anxious or worried, this begins to have an impact upon our daily lives, and we may develop anxiety, low mood, depression, stress and trauma. Feeling low or distressed from time to time may be a common difficulty experienced, particularly at the moment. When this low feeling persists every day for most of the day, for several weeks, it could be a symptom of depression.
So thinking for a moment about what underpins anxiety and low mood. Anxiety is a feeling of unease, worry or fear. It is a normal, if unpleasant, part of life, and it can affect us all in different ways and at different times. Whereas stress is something that will come and go as the external factor causing it comes and goes, be that a work, relationship or difficult financial situation, anxiety is something that can persist whether or not the cause is clear to the sufferer. Often when experiencing anxiety, we don't feel we have the resources to cope with a particular situation, and therefore we tend to avoid it. The more we avoid the situation, the more we reinforce the view that it is something to be scared of. For example, if a young person feels anxious about school due to COVID and then doesn't go into school, their anxiety levels can come down when they're not at school, and then their brain thinks, school was something to feel scared of because I feel much better now that I'm not there. Then the next morning when they get up, they feel even more anxious because they've convinced themselves that school was something to be scared of and that staying at home made them feel much better. Low mood has 3 main things at its core. One of these is rumination, which is a term used to refer to a state in which we churn thoughts over and over in our minds, usually about past events. We keep thinking about an event, how it could have gone differently, what others did to us, how we could have reacted differently, and what could have gone right. As you can imagine, rumination can very quickly lead to a negative mood. Other aspects of low mood are feelings of loss, a loss of interest and enjoyment in daily activities, and a lack of motivation due to feeling low levels of self-esteem and that our actions won't make a difference. Also, our mind is so busy using our emotional brain, it is harder to use our thinking brain to find motivation. Knowing about these core patterns helps set a direction for how to support the young person experiencing the anxiety or low mood, as we'll go on to explore shortly.
So now we're going to think about some of the physical symptoms of possible things to look out for in relation to anxiety. And as you can see on the screen, some of the blue boxes are perhaps the less severe things to look out for, and the darker green ones are more severe. So things like muscle tension, headaches, and complaints of stomach aches in young people might be a sign or something to look out for. Difficulty sleeping, or children and young people appearing tired or irritable when in school, or reports from home might also be a sign of anxiety. Overestimation of threats, so worrying about failing schoolwork or worrying excessively, can also be something to think about. But when should we become concerned? When it shifts and is leading to lots of upset for that child and their family, or is interfering with everyday life for that child or young person, and persists over time, this is when we might begin to become concerned. Anxiety can be difficult to spot, though, and some of the signs and signals may be quite subtle.
So how can we support a young person or another member of the school community who's experiencing anxiety? Well, it's important when planning support for young people in particular that we link in with parents and carers and aim to work together on any identified strategies. It's also helpful to normalise feelings where we can. For example, by reiterating messages that everyone gets anxious, especially in stressful times, and to listen carefully and praise the young person or colleague for sharing their difficulties. Some other things we can do to support someone who might be feeling anxious might be making talking about feelings a part of the classroom environment. So promoting the view that all feelings are okay rather than being good or bad, and using daily feelings check-ins as a whole class or with a key adult. You could also encourage young people to focus on what is going on around them to distract them from their panicky thoughts. For example, finding 5 things they can see, 4 things they can touch, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can taste, and 1 thing they can smell. This can be thought of as a grounding technique and can provide some containment when anxiety levels are particularly high. It's also useful to explore calming strategies and to promote a calm classroom atmosphere where possible. Also, ensure staff are aware that anxiety can impact on concentration and that staff make adjustments for young people accordingly, such as through the use of movement breaks, for example. It's helpful to increase predictability through clear structures and predictable routines and to promote a sense of control when this is possible. Also, try to support manageable steps to overcome fears, such as planning small steps to test negative assumptions or look for evidence that supports or challenges their negative thoughts. It can be helpful to check in regularly on young people's anxiety levels, such as rating them on a scale from 0 to 10, for example, and helping young people to reflect on what has made a difference to their anxiety levels over time. And finally, for some children, it might be that having a dedicated and boundaried worry time with a key adult is helpful for them.
Thinking more closely now about possible signs of low mood and depression, and with the boxes on the slide as a continuum from the blue across to the green. Things to look out for might be a child, a young person or colleague becoming quiet or withdrawn, and possibly angry or irritable. It might be that this person begins to isolate themselves, perhaps in the playground or in the classroom. And it might be that you notice that that person isn't looking after themselves as much as usual, or engaging in activities that they previously enjoyed. This person might present as tired, or you might start to observe patterns of poor attendance and possibly self-harm. Continuous low mood or sadness can be linked with feelings of hopelessness or helplessness. That person might feel tearful or talk about feelings of guilt. As we noted, we can all experience low mood from time to time, but again, if that low mood is present for most days for 2 weeks, the young person may be experiencing depression.
When thinking about how we can support young people with low mood, it's important to promote a culture in which emotions are openly discussed and acknowledged, and a whole school approach to mental health, for example, the Emotionally Friendly Settings programme, can be really helpful. Use of approaches such as emotion coaching can also be really useful. This is an approach which involves empathising with young people, labelling and validating their emotions, and problem solving of how to respond differently within certain situations. There's an important role here for key adults in encouraging connection and communication with no topics off limits. Ensure that subjects are not taboo and that young people are able to ask questions about or talk about issues such as self-harm. It is important to exercise some self-care around discussions of suicidality because of the danger of contagion. Some children and young people may be tempted to end their own life as a way of gaining self-esteem if they witness the deceased or the act of suicide being glorified. So it's really important not to glorify suicide, but at the same time, it shouldn't be a taboo subject. It's important to encourage the young person to reflect on their strengths and to foster a sense of hope. Strengths can be explored visually through a book of success or positive postcards, for example. It can also be helpful to plan together with the young person around what they can do to foster a sense of achievement, connection, and enjoyment. Encourage any positive activities that make the young person feel good, including physical activity. As with any plans, it's important to involve the young person in order to obtain their views and gain their buy-in to any support strategies being implemented. For more information on how to support those with anxiety or low mood, you can look at the MindEd website at www.minded.org.uk.
Thank you for listening to our input on anxiety, low mood and depression. Please see our other videos on this website for more information about how to support children and young people during the current COVID-19 pandemic.